Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and we are continuing on with our Heart Month. And today we're going to be focusing all about nutrition with Eating to Your Heart's Content with Mary Mellady. Mary has been a long time TMC. She is the director of Connected Health and Wellness here at TMC, and she has done so many great presentations for us. So I love when you get to come and share with us all about what we should look at as far as our nutrition for our heart health, Mary. So thank you for being here today.
You're welcome.
So we do have an online audience that is watching along with an in-person audience today. If you're watching us from home, please, if you have any questions for Mary, leave them in the chat and I'll be sure to ask her those questions when she finishes her presentation. I'm going to go ahead and put this up for you now, Mary, so that you can go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Maya. Good morning. My name is Mary Mellady, as Maya said, and I'm a registered dietitian. And what that means is I tell people what they should and shouldn't eat, and then they decide what they really are going to do after that. But today we're talking about our heart. And if you've been to any of my presentations, pretty much everything I'm going to tell you, I've told you before, because taking care of our heart also takes care of our brain, also helps our joints, also helps chronic pain and chronic disease. So it's going to be a little bit of a repeat, but I believe the more we hear it, maybe some more things we will catch on to and actually start to internalize and use. Right, so let's get going here. All right, so we're going to talk about the truth about nutrition and heart health. Somebody before the presentation started mentioning she saw that we shouldn't eat oatmeal anymore. What? Yes, no, we should eat oatmeal, and we'll talk about why. Can I eat all the butter and cheese I want? Well, let's just start right off and say no. I'm a cheese lover. You all know that. And unfortunately, we all can't eat as much cheese as we want. Are eggs good for us? We'll talk about some eggs. Sugar. We all want to know about sugar. What should I do to show my heart a little love? Okay, any other questions that you guys have? So, fact or fiction? Here's some things that from the internet. It's our favorite source of information. It's where I get all my nutrition facts, is right from the internet. That's a joke. All right, so coconut oil. Coconut oil is always in the news about something, and I'll go into more detail, but this is actually fiction. Coconut oil doesn't help us lose weight. It isn't good for us inside. And actually, when I was looking for actually this little piece of art, I came across now even WebMD, which is pretty my lowest source of information that I go to. Even WebMD now says that the benefits of coconut oil are for our external use, for our hair, for our skin, for our nails, for our dogs' noses and paws, but not for losing weight or for anything internal. And then the milk is whole fat dairy. Whole fat dairy seems to be, it pops back up, but it's been up in the news for a while now. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. There's a little bit of controversy about whole fat dairy. I will say that as dietitians, we still recommend that is not a good decision to use whole fat dairy. But we'll talk more about that. Wine, everybody loves a nice glass of wine usually. And if you look for the right study, it will tell you that you should drink wine. And then if you look for the real studies, they'll tell you, maybe not. We have some dark chocolate and the pomegranate oil as those superfoods. My husband loves to say, well, I'm eating chocolate because it's a superfood. And it's not a superfood when you eat the whole bag. It becomes a super bad food. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, the concept of everything in moderation, right? All right, so we're going to look at some risk factors, things that we may or may not be able to control. Number one is our increasing age. The majority of people who have coronary artery or coronary heart disease are 65 and older, those that die from it. Okay, so it's just sort of intrinsic with our age. As we age, we know this. We feel like how many people say, I feel like I'm falling apart? We say that like almost every day. My joints hurt, or, we experience more of these chronic health conditions. So increasing age is just a fact of life. Unfortunately, being male, you're at greater risk for heart disease or heart attacks than women. However, women, y'all, except for one, we're the ones that ignore the signs more often because we're the ones taking care of everyone else and we don't take care of ourselves. So women tend to be predisposed to, just not by our genetic makeup, but by how we behave, to ignore the signs and to ignore taking care of ourselves in lieu of taking care of everybody else. Okay. So, but men, you're genetically predisposed to higher risk for heart attacks. And then heredity. If you have family history, race can play into that, just everything that goes with your heredity. But we can't control any of these things. So I'm just putting those out there. What we can control, however, are some of the things that we do, our daily habits, how we live our lives. Smoking increases our risk for heart disease, for heart attacks. Lack of physical activity or physical inactivity. Having high blood cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. So, you go to the doctor, you get your labs done, and you have a total cholesterol, and then you have an HDL, which is our good cholesterol, and an LDL, which is our bad cholesterol. So when that bad cholesterol is much higher than our good cholesterol, that's when we are at higher risk. Having high blood pressure. So, we always get our blood pressure checked whenever we go to the doctor. That can impact our risk for heart disease and for coronary heart attacks. Obesity or being overweight can really impact, just having that extra body fat can impact how hard our heart has to work. And then diabetes. There is a phenomenon known, it's this trifecta of having high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and high blood sugar. Those things all kind of go together. So if you have one, you're at higher risk for having one or two of the others as well. So that's why we'll talk about sugar as well as all of kind of the other foods that we traditionally think about as heart health. So we need to think about taking control. We can't control our sex. We can't control our age. We can't control where our parents were born, where we were born. But we can control the things that we do every day in our life. So if you smoke currently, get some help to help quit smoking. Be physically active. So I talk a lot about nutrition, but physical activity goes hand in hand with nutrition, regardless of what topic I'm talking about, whether it's about diabetes or heart health or brain health or joint health. You need to be physically active in order for all the good things you're eating to really work for your body. Okay? So if you aren't physically active, the recommendation is minimum of 30 minutes, at least 5 days a week. And notice I didn't say exercise. I am saying just physically active. And physically active to me means doing something that you enjoy that increases your heart rate. Enough so that you're breathing a little more hard than you normally would. Okay? So there's a talk-sing test. If whatever you're doing that you enjoy, whether it's walking or hiking or gardening or cleaning the house, if you enjoy cleaning the house, you might need to seek some other help. But it might get your heart rate up. So you should be able to talk and let somebody know if you need help, but you shouldn't be able to sing. You're not working hard if you're singing, okay? I had a friend that I ran with, and she would sing, and it irritated me so much. Finally, I said, you're clearly not running hard enough if you can sing. So start running harder and go away. So you don't want to be able to sing. And then making healthy food choices whether that's every single day at home or when you're eating out or when you're grocery shopping. We have many opportunities to make choices around the foods that we eat. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So I mentioned before the bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol. What raises our cholesterol? We used to think, and this goes back to when you mentioned that you read that on the internet that we can't eat oats anymore. There's so much information and so much disinformation out there. A lot of it, though, doesn't start out as misinformation. It starts out as nutrition is really actually quite a young science. It's just within the last 20 years, 30 years that we started looking at how food is medicine for our body and how different foods interact in our bodies. You know, we're just learning now that we can't always just take a supplement, that doesn't act the same way in our body as real food does. And why is that? We still don't always know the answer. So nutrition is a young and developing science. And so we might tell you one thing, and here's an example. We once told you that you couldn't eat eggs if you had high cholesterol because eggs are high in cholesterol. How many of you remember that? I remember giving that advice to somebody when I first started out as a dietitian. Oh, your cholesterol is high. You better cut out all your eggs and only eat egg whites. Okay, well, that we now know is not the truth because we did more research. We have more studies, a longevity of studies that shows us that it's not the cholesterol in food that raises the cholesterol in your blood. It's that saturated fat in food, and saturated fat are those fats that are solid at room temperature, like the butter. So going back to, can I eat as much butter as I want? No. Like the cheese, the fat in cheese, the fat in coconut oil. So that goes back to one of the other myths. All of these things that are solid at room temperature can cause our LDL cholesterol to rise, and that increases our risk for heart disease. All right. Red meat is also a risk. Primarily, when you think about meat, I had to take a meat cutting class, and they always told us you want to look for the cut of meat that has that beautiful marbling because that's what's going to bring the flavor to the meat. Okay, that's also going to raise your cholesterol. So you want to choose meat that is, if it's ground, that it is, that 95 or 97.3 or 96.4, whatever ratio the grocery store is using. Or if it's a solid cut of meat that you can cut the fat off from around it, that you're draining the fat away from meat, that you're not eating the skin off the poultry. And this is where we talk about the milk fats, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the coconut oils. But so we know now that it's the saturated fats that are causing our cholesterol in our body to rise. So that's where sometimes people will tell me, well, I just don't know what to believe because you told me one time that I wasn't supposed to eat eggs, and now you tell me that I can eat eggs. What am I supposed to believe? And what I will always say is you just have to kind of bear with us as we grow as a science and learn more about how food is interacting with our bodies and our cells and what kind of effects different things have. So that I'm sure there's more that's going to come out about any different food as we watch it more. Now we're learning all about how we need to eat all of these foods that are healthy for our gut. We never talked about that before. All we talked about was fiber because we just wanted food to move through our gut. Now we want food to actually feed our gut. So we learn something different every single year that we have more research data. So the truth about whole fat dairy. So this is what I wanted to talk about. It may not have an impact on our cardiovascular function and our risk for cardiovascular disease, but there is some studies out there that link whole fat dairy, I put this up here, that link the whole fat dairy to worsening our survival rates for breast cancer survivors. So there is that out there. As with any research, you're going to be able to find the data that you want to support the side of the coin that you want to be on. But I will, like I started off saying, we still recommend that you choose a low-fat dairy product, whether that's milk or whether that's a yogurt or a cottage cheese, in lieu of a whole-fat dairy for anybody over the age of 2. Our little tykes, we still want them to get a lot of those fat calories and some of those things.
I, as a diabetic, have been told not to eat low fat.
milk or low fat at all?
Low-fat dairy, because supposedly has higher sugar.
Okay, and who told you that? Because I don't want to say
Doctors.
your doctor. Okay. So, I'm never going to say go against what your doctor has told you, but there is a plenty of evidence that says otherwise, that says that you should be eating low-fat foods. Here's the rub with the low fat. When you take the fat out, right, the volume of milk is still there. So the concentration of the carbohydrate goes up versus if you have fat in there, it looks like there's a lower carbohydrate content. So it looks like when you remove all the fat from the milk, that you have a very concentrated carbohydrate source from milk and from dairy. And so in that case, that's why he would say diabetics shouldn't have low-fat dairy. But it's a healthy source of carbohydrate, and if you're balancing it with other high-protein foods, then you're okay. There are cases where we recommend that you don't have a low-fat dairy all by itself. I would never tell a diabetic to go drink a glass of milk and that's it, and not pair that, or a yogurt, and not pair that with a good source of protein. The problem with dairy is that it's a blend of carbs and protein, and when you pull out some of that fat, it gets processed a lot quicker. So that is also maybe why he is recommending, or she is recommending, not to have low-fat dairy if you're eating it just all by itself. Okay, so it's part of a whole bigger picture, I think. The risk that comes for diabetics, like I had started off saying, if you have high blood sugar, chances are, if you don't already, you are at much higher risk to develop higher cholesterol, high blood pressure. It's just these three things that happen together. And so eating a lower fat diet can help reduce your risk for heart disease.
Well, it's also better for weight loss.
It is, which would be better for your blood sugar. We know that if you lose weight, your blood sugar automatically follows and goes down. So there's a rub, and you have to find the balance, and so that's why it's really important to have a good grasp of your diet, and that you've worked with your doctor, a diabetic educator, and a dietitian to know what that balance is. Okay, dairy. That's kind of like my thing right now, is dairy. And then coconut oil. The myth is, I put this up here, that coconut oil is made of medium chain triglycerides and therefore get absorbed and used as energy rather than getting stored as a fat in our arteries. But the truth is that coconut oil is 80 to 90% saturated fat, the stuff that you buy in the store that we all have access to. So it's not medium chain triglyceride, it's saturated fats. So we recommend, there is no doubt that using coconut oil when you're cooking some sort of particular entree can add a lovely flavor to it. And so we're not saying that you shouldn't use it as a flavoring. What we are saying is that it's not your main cooking oil, that you're not eating tablespoons of it. I literally had an employee, she came in, she told me, I eat 2 tablespoons of coconut oil every day. And I said, why? And she goes, well, because it's going to help me lose weight. And I said, oh, okay. Let me know how that works out. And 2 months later, she came back. She goes, I gained like 10 pounds. I wonder why. I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. So it's like I started off saying, coconut oil is great as a seasoning agent. Good for outside our body. It's really great as a mask on your hair. It's really great for your skin, but it is not good for our insides. And, okay, so even the American Heart Association says coconut oil on your skin, not in your foods. And then 50 years of research shows that the diet's high in saturated fats is associated with an increased risk of heart attacks and strokes. So fats and oils, what we do want to be choosing are those unsaturated fats, those fats that are liquid at room temperature, whether that's an olive or a canola or a peanut or a sesame or an avocado. I gave some other talk and somebody was talking about the avocado oils because of a lot of the olive oils. They aren't regulated, and so we aren't getting the quality of olive oil that we thought that we were once getting, so they've switched to the avocado oil. That is completely up to you. As long as it's room temperature oil, that's what we're going to continue to recommend. Nuts, seeds, and those butters, that peanut butter, the almond butter. So somebody could argue that that's solid at room temperature, right? Peanut butter is solid, and therefore it would be an unhealthy fat. It is not, however. The nut butters are primarily a poly and monounsaturated fat blend. There should be very little, if no, saturated fat. The key with the nut butters, especially if you're diabetic, is that you want to find a nut butter that is just nuts. It should have nuts and maybe a little salt added to it. But many peanut butters will have, or almond butters will have 10 other ingredients, and they'll add oil, and they'll add sugar, and they'll add all of these preservatives and emulsifiers to help keep it this nice, beautiful, creamy peanut butter that we're used to seeing, because seeing some of the oil float on top of peanut butter is sort of disconcerting to some people. But that's what's going to make a peanut butter more unhealthy, is if they're adding extra oil and adding extra sugar. So you're really looking for a nut butter that is just the nut and maybe a little bit of salt. I've never found a nut butter that's just nuts unless you grind it up yourself. The key to a nut butter that doesn't have all the added ingredients is when you open it and mix it up, and the true butters that are, that are just nuts, you need to store in the refrigerator. Store it upside down, because then all that, the actual oil from the nuts stays integrated with the actual nuts. So you just have to mix it once, store it upside down in the refrigerator. And then avocados and olives are also healthy choices for fats. The key to the avocado, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but one serving is only 1/8 of an avocado. I don't know who actually eats only 1/8 of an avocado. I'm pretty proud when I only eat half of the avocado. So, baby steps. So don't eat the whole avocado, but then it's going to go bad. So you better share it with somebody. So, but it is a healthy source of fat. And there are heart healthy, but they are still high in calories. So watch portions. So that's the additions to the avocados and the olives. Omega-3s, this is a type of unsaturated fat. It has been found to have anti-inflammatory properties. And we know that inflammation is what adds to our risk for heart disease if we have a lot of inflammation in our body. Best sources of these are salmon, tuna, mackerel, and sardines. Plant sources include walnuts, and then canola oil, ground flaxseed, chia seeds, and leafy greens. When you're grinding up flax seeds, you need to grind them right before you use them. Otherwise, they lose some of their potency. So if you're going to use flax seeds, and they're actually really lovely when you sprinkle them on top of salads, that you buy them as a whole seed and then kind of grind them up a little bit and then sprinkle them on your salad. Okay. This would be where we've found some research to say that you can't just take a supplement. You do want to take a supplement if you don't eat any fish at all. If you're not willing to eat any fish, then it would be better than nothing. But much of the research shows much better effects on our body if you eat a real food source. All right. And then some alternatives, the ways that we can make some healthy choices. We love to have butter on our toast, right? Or butter on our potatoes or things like that. So maybe try something as an alternative. That's where avocado toast probably originally came from. And now avocado toast is like on every menu, and it's not just avocado on toast. There's so much more to it. But this would be a good thing. Instead of using butter, you could spread some avocado on your toast, or A friend of mine actually puts olive oil and she puts it in a container and she refrigerates it. And that's what she spreads on her toast. You got to spread it really fast because it will become liquid pretty quickly at room temperature. But it's an option to do, or using a nut butter on your toast. For things like potatoes or other things that you might put butter on, maybe you don't need to put anything on those, or maybe you're using something like a salsa, or that you're using a low-fat cottage cheese, something that's going to give additional flavor if that's what you're looking for, or moisture to something that doesn't increase the fat content of that particular item.
The other thing I found is lemon on a potato.
Really?
Yes.
I've
lemon.
never tried that.
I had a boss who it was recommended when she was pregnant by her doctor.
Lemon?
And it's very good.
Yeah. Well, I often talk about eating our food naked, that a lot of us put a lot of stuff on our food. And I really started talking about that with kids, and they thought that was just hysterical that we were eating food naked. But not putting all the butter or the cheese, kids don't even know what broccoli is without a cheese sauce on it. So what does it really taste like to eat a potato just with nothing, or with a little bit of lemon on there? We often don't know what that tastes like. So going back to what was the original taste of this food, and just give it a try. So cooking with olive oil, adding a teaspoon of butter for flavor. So kind of mixing a little bit in there just to give you flavor is another idea. This is where that everything in moderation comes in. Just a little bit for flavor. Enjoy it. And the other thing that was in the front about is eating as much cheese. Thinking about cheese, we do know that it raises our bad cholesterol, that LDL cholesterol. Cheese is lovely. So eat cheese and enjoy cheese, but don't put cheese in things that you're never going to taste it. When we sprinkle cheese on our salad, do you ever notice it's there? Or you put it inside of a burrito or put it on a sandwich? You probably won't miss if it's gone, because there's so many other flavors and textures that to take the cheese out, you may never know it's gone. Okay, so think about that. A lot of the foods that are higher in fat, we can enjoy in small portions by themselves, so we're really just enjoying the flavor of that particular food. What about eggs? So, as I mentioned, dietary cholesterol does not equal blood cholesterol. Saturated fats is what increases our LDLs. So things that are high in cholesterol, and this really cracks me up. So if you see this on the internet and it says, this food is now cholesterol free. Oatmeal, no, not oatmeal. There was some breakfast cereal I saw that said, now cholesterol free. Okay, well, it was always cholesterol free because it was made from corn. I hope it didn't have animal fat in it, but that's where the cholesterol comes, is from animal-based products. So things like the egg yolk, caviar, oysters, lobster, crab, and shrimp are just some good examples of foods that are traditionally seen as high in cholesterol, but could still be considered healthy for us. We do now know that you can have an egg a day as part of a healthy diet, so 7 eggs a week. So just kind of think through that. If you're reading a product that says it's cholesterol free, don't get all excited. It probably always was. They're just using that as marketing, okay? So now let's talk about added sugars, because we've talked about sugar increases our risk for diabetes. Diabetes increases our risk for heart disease. So we need to manage both of those together to keep our heart happy. Added sugar can increase our triglycerides, and added sugar can also increase our weight gain, and it increases our stress. When we increase our stress, that also impacts our heart. That cortisol can cause inflammation, can cause us to not use our blood sugar appropriately. So stress, very bad, has many effects. It's got all these like tentacles, think about it, that affects our body in many different ways. For sugar, though, it's that triglyceride. So that's another one of those parts of that cholesterol, that lipid panel that you get. You get your cholesterol, you get the HDL, LDL, VLDL, and then you get your triglycerides. Triglycerides are about the sugar that we're eating, okay? So this is sad, but women need to limit their sugar to 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day. Men get 9. I don't know why men get 3 more, but you do. You get it because of your muscle mass. Men traditionally have more muscle mass than women do. So look at this word, added sugar. Okay? Underline that. That does not mean and does not include things like fruit or the milk or the sugar that's listed in yogurts or milk or listed on a whole grain package. Okay, so when you're reading the label, it says carbohydrate and then it says sugar, fiber, and now most labels, all labels should say added sugar. Okay, and that's what you need to keep to 6 teaspoons or less a day. The natural occurring sugars in milk, in grains, in fruits, and in some of the starchy vegetables don't count as added sugar. They're always there. That's just part of the food, okay? So it becomes a little tricky when you're talking about dairy, because dairy has a lot of natural sugar, but we also add a lot to it. So you think about a Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt, great, probably has, now I've forgotten, maybe like 12 grams of natural occurring sugar. But then you look at vanilla flavored, and we've gone up to 18 to 20 grams. And now you look at the caramel macchiato yogurt, which that's got to be good for you because it's yogurt, right? Yeah, that probably has 32 grams of added sugar to it. So you have to be very kind of savvy about what you are looking at when you're reading labels, okay? Because
Do you know how many grams are in a teaspoon of sugar?
oh my gosh, I should, but I don't. I can Google that really quick for you, though. Or maybe Maya will Google that for me and tell us.
I noticed labels now do say added sugar.
Yep.
To know the total sugar, do you add together the natural sugar and the added?
Yes.
You do.
But you don't necessarily need to know the total sugar as much as you just need to be watching that added sugar line. So that was mandated by the FDA that companies had to start putting that on their labels. Because here's why. And so I'm sure that food manufacturers are going to figure out a way around this, as they always do. They started having to put the ingredients of food in descending order of how much was in that product, right? We all know that. So we all knew that if sugar was the first ingredient, that product we probably shouldn't eat because it had a lot of sugar, because that was the first ingredient, right? We all know that. So now food companies are using many different forms of sugar. Now they use brown sugar, corn syrup, rice syrup. They even use fructose. And so they just start using all these different kinds of sugar. So it's way down in the ingredient line. So now we think, this must be healthy because there's no sugar in the top 4 items. Well, it's because they've spread them all out and used multiple forms of sugar to tease us a little bit. And so that's why they started putting the added sugar. Maya, you can tell me how many grams of sugar in a teaspoon?
Yes, it's 4 grams of sugar in a teaspoon.
4 grams of sugar per teaspoon. So you get 24 grams of added sugar. Thank you, Maya. I should know that. And I probably did at one point, but I'm old, so I forget things. Okay. Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, well, I missed some of what you're saying because my hearing isn't so great. But so it says 6 teaspoons, but on the labels it always says grams. So how do you translate that?
That's what Maya just gave us. So it's 24 grams.
1 teaspoon.
So you get a total of 24 grams of added sugar. So that's just sugar that you add to coffee. That's in any sweets that you eat, in anything that the food companies are adding to their food. Okay, so that doesn't include things like fruit or milk milk sugars.
I saw an example of a food pyramid. It looked totally screwy from what it used to have been. It was literally upside down from what you were supposed to be eating.
With the sugar on the top? No,
Pretty
I
much,
haven't seen that one.
but it should be on the computer.
That's okay. Yeah, I haven't seen that
The
one.
other thing is, quantities. I mean, that would be a really, really big.
It is, and we will talk about portion sizes in a minute. Portion size, so quantity, yeah. Okay, so added sugar bad. It's in all of our food, so try to limit those foods that you have that you know are sweetened. Limit those things that are just obvious. And unfortunately, those are all probably those comfort foods that we all like to eat: the ice creams, the cookies, the cakes, the baked goods, the, frappuccinos that we drink, things like that. So that's going to be your number one and easiest thing to start to reduce those. I'm not saying you could never have those. I'm saying to reduce them, okay? Healthy choices, water. We need to drink more water. If you don't like the flavor of water, throw in a piece of fruit, throw in a lemon, throw in a cucumber, throw in some blueberries or some watermelon, whatever's in season. It's citrus season, so it's great right now. You can put grapefruit in your water, or lemon, or oranges or tangerines. Read labels and look for products with less sugar. Be careful. Some things that are sugar-free that seem to be our friend, they increase the fat content of those products because something has to give the product flavor. So if it's not the sugar, it's the fat. So the best answer is to eat as close to natural food products as you can and try to stay away from highly processed foods. Cut back slowly. So like I was talking about eating food naked, getting back to the original flavor. Or if you're drinking whole milk now, don't just go to skim milk. That's never going to work for you. If you're used to using a lot of butter on your toast every day, don't go cold turkey because you're going to say this tastes terrible. So don't do that. Take little steps so that you kind of build up your acquired taste to how you are eating food now. And if you choose artificial sweeteners, choose them in moderation. And we always get this question: what's the best artificial sweetener? We don't have a strict line about which one is the best thing to use, but we do like the studies related to stevia. They seem to have at this point in time, to have the lowest side effects, the least side effects, okay? Salt. Happen to be a salt problem person here. But our body does need sodium, but it doesn't need as much as we typically get. So on average, normal U.S. adults eat about 3,400 milligrams per day, when we actually only need between 12 and 15. So when you come into the hospital, if you're ever here, I hope you're not here in the bed, because that's not good. We like to see you in class. But if you have high blood pressure, we're going to put you on a 2-gram, meaning a 2,000 milligram sodium diet, and you're going to hate it. Everybody hates it. They don't let me have anything that tastes good. Yeah, it's so that's just how much salt that we eat. Like normal levels are even lower than that, what we should be eating. So why do we eat so much salt? Well, it's because all of our food is so processed, and they probably started way long ago, used salt as a preservative, right? And so we just started using more and more salt. That's what we got used to eating. But now they add salt because it gets us to eat more, right? You can't eat just one Pringles. Isn't that the commercial? Or no, it's a Lay's. You can't just eat one Lay's. I can't. They put it on everything. We put salt in everything. So what can you do? Who doesn't like salt here? Oh my gosh, what do you do?
Get as little as possible, and I go to restaurants and they send the food back.
Really?
They can't, yeah, and they tell me, oh, Americans love salt. Everybody loves this.
Yes.
You're the exception.
Yes, you are the exception.
I hate it.
Okay, well, good for you. So if you are the average and not the exception, then start by just not adding salt to your food at the table. There's already a lot of salt in your food. Unless you've prepared it from scratch, and even then, your chicken breast is injected with salt water. A lot of the meats have some sort of salt rub on them to preserve them and to help with the coloring. So know that it is already salted and try using some other seasonings. Try using the lemon juice. Maybe try using pepper or just some other flavor blends of different herbs and spices that are salt-free. Be careful with a lot of the salt blend or a lot of the flavor blends. They have salt mixed in there and they just don't tell you.
What do I remember about potassium something? So
There is a potassium chloride that is a salt-like substitute. So you can find those out there. You just have to make sure that your potassium levels are normal. And looking for products and avoiding products that you can actually see the salt right on them. You know, like crackers, you can see the grains of salt on there. Okay, maybe those aren't your best crackers to choose. Maybe you choose something that is an unsalted top or choosing some other type of snack food product. Tortilla chips. We all love tortilla chips. Seems to be a thing. You can make your own. Using corn tortillas, you just cut them up, throw them in the oven, and bake them. And then there's no salt on them and they haven't been fried. And you can put your own seasoning on top if you want. All right, sources of sodium, like I talked about, is processed foods, cured meats, and lunch meats. So sandwiches used to be a big thing. I don't know if I see people eating so many sandwiches anymore, but we do have a lot of delis and sandwich shops around town. All of those thinly sliced meats are probably coming off of processed meat loaf of sorts, and they're highly or very high in salt, sodium. A lot of our canned foods are very high in salt. So that's why we don't usually recommend canned vegetables, because that salt is part of that curing process, part of that preservative. Even those canned vegetables that say low sodium are still very high in salt. So if you do need to use canned vegetables, because there is an occasion where canned vegetables are needed, you can reduce some of that salt by rinsing them with water and letting them drain before you use them. And then, as you mentioned, going out to eat, all their food is high in salt. Fast food, always high in salt. So we have talked about earlier in the presentation that high blood pressure can increase our risk for heart disease, and having a high salt intake in our diet can affect our blood pressure. Yes.
Yeah, what about Himalayan salt? I just read somewhere that that's not good for a diabetic, but I don't know why.
So much like I always say, sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar. I don't care what you call it, it's still sugar. Cane sugar is still the same thing as powdered sugar, is still the same thing as agave syrup, is still the same thing as honey. Salt is salt is salt is salt. I don't care if it's from the Himalayas. I don't care if it's from the south coast of some foreign, really exotic island. I don't care if it's pink, black, or white. It is salt. So yeah. Okay. Eat fewer processed foods. I think we talked about that. Read the labels. Look for products with less sodium. And just snack on more fresh fruits and vegetables. The things that we didn't talk about yet is, what do we want to do in our diet? I've just focused on we shouldn't have too many saturated fats, we shouldn't have sugar, and we shouldn't have a lot of salt, because those are the things that are risks for our hearts. So, things that we can do, we can eat more fresh fruits and vegetables. We can increase our potassium, fiber, and phytochemicals. These are all good things for our heart. And this is a really beautiful picture. So I don't know what store this came out of, but I want to go there. Farmers markets. We have so many farmers markets around here. Do you guys take advantage of those? A lot of fresh produce. And the really great thing about going to a farmer's market is they will tell you how to use that produce in many cases, which is really brilliant, because most of us aren't chefs naturally. or trained. And so that's really helpful to know how to use all of this fresh produce. They're also great just to snack on. Have it around, cut it up. The easier it is for you to snack on this stuff, the more likely you will be. So if you get a thing of celery or a thing of mushrooms or cherry tomatoes, and you just have them all pre-washed and cut up, so easy to snack on.
What about the frozen dinners that say no preservatives added? Is that possible? What do they do? Just
They might be able
freeze them
to
off the tree or-
flash freeze it, but the food itself would still have a lot of salt in it. They probably just mean they're not adding more salt as a preservative to the food.
Okay.
So,
Can you repeat the question?
so the question was, what about the frozen meals that say no preservatives added? So what I'm assuming, I would have to actually look at the label to see what they mean, but what I'm assuming with regards to salt content is that the food is still high in salt. They're just not using additional salt for the freezing process or the preservative process.
But what they do is they have the good food in a basket, and then under the basket is something you can pour on the food.
Oh, okay.
And I just didn't eat whatever was under the basket.
Well, that's a good choice. So that is a good choice. That is a good tip. So you get a lot of things that have seasoning packets in it or that have a sauce that are on the side that you need to heat up extra. So a great small step, and that's what I'm all about, is making one small change, is just don't add that seasoning packet. Don't use the packet underneath the basket. That's a great start. Good start. Good call. So the glass of wine that was on the front side. So there is some research out there that shows that red wine can be beneficial to our heart. The real research actually shows that you must be drinking like big gallons of wine. Big, lots of it, which would affect our liver and our brain negatively in order to help our heart. So if you enjoy alcohol, please do so in moderation. And what that means is for women, that's 1 drink. For men, it's 2. And that's not a drink. It's not a goblet. It's a 12-ounce beer, 4.5 ounces of wine, 1.5 ounce of 80 proof, or 1 ounce of 100 proof spirits. Okay? This goes to the everything in moderation. If you drink, drink responsibly. If you don't start because you think you're helping your heart. You're not. If you enjoy sweet foods, enjoy in moderation. Don't go overboard. And also don't go to the other extreme where you're giving it up entirely, because I can tell you what's going to happen. You're going to break one day. I've done that. And then you eat everything in sight, right? Same thing with salt. I'm not going to eat any more salt. Well, maybe not you. That's not going to happen to you. But most of us, if we say we're not going to eat any more salt, one day we're just going to snap and we're going to eat the whole bag of potato chips.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I've never asked a dietitian this, but everybody has an opinion. When they say, gee, that looks like my cat. When they say that there's so much wine in something or whatever that it cooks off, it's okay for an alcoholic not to, or to eat. I don't trust any of that stuff.
I think that technically the alcohol compounds burn off. I, however, would not recommend it to somebody that's an alcoholic or somebody that has any kind of liver disease. I don't think that's a risk to take. Okay, so other healthy habits. So we talked about eating in moderation. That wasn't about any specific food. We also didn't talk about the foods we do want to eat besides produce. Eating a lot of produce. Eating whole grains. My friend back there mentioned no oatmeal. Oatmeal is actually very good for our heart. I don't know what, I would be interested to know what that link was taking you to. But a whole grain that is not, doesn't have a lot of added stuff to it. So if it's just plain oats, that's great. If it's the brown sugar and cinnamon oatmeal packages, probably not a good choice. So eating those whole grains increases the fiber that we eat in our diet. Higher fiber diets help to lower our cholesterol, which is good for our heart. Also good for our heart is getting enough sleep. So this is my friend's Lori's past cat. He passed away a couple years ago. His name is Misto, but he was a magnificent napper. He knew how to get his sleep, but the recommendation for us adults is 7 to 9 hours. Inadequate sleep is linked to increased coronary heart disease. And that's because while we sleep, our body has a lot of repairing it does. The mitochondria and all these other cellular functions work at night to repair our bodies so that they're ready for the next day. It helps to decrease our cortisol levels, that stress hormone that is linked to inflammation and heart disease. So, like it says, lack of sleep puts an increased pressure on our cardiovascular system. So everybody go take a nap after this, okay? Be happy. So observational studies have shown that there's a correlation between happiness and our heart health, and our blood pressures and our risk for heart disease. This is linked to that idea of cortisol. If we experience, and I think I have a next slide about gratitude, if we are more grateful, if we are happier, if we find joy in our lives every day, our levels of cortisol are more likely to be lower than somebody who is stressed and angry and hasn't found a way to be grateful for what they have in them. So every day, find something to be joyful about. So my normal presentation, I tell you, don't eat out of the package. My presentation today, if there's one thing you take away, it's take away that you find one thing to be happy about each day. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be a ridiculous dad joke. And just have a good belly laugh once a day. Okay? And this is the one thing that you don't have to do in moderation. You can do this as much as you want. Be happy and express gratitude. So there's a lot of stuff out there about writing in a journal, writing down what you're grateful for, because it really helps you to be mindful and to realize that things really are out there that you can be thankful for. Can improve our mood, reduce our stress. Reducing our stress decreases our cortisol level, and it can help us sleep better and feel more energetic. Because how many of you, if you've had a stressful day or you're feeling really grumpy about something, go to sleep right away and sleep like a baby? No, I know. Yeah, somebody looks at me cross-eyed, I don't sleep that night because I'm so upset about it. So it affects our sleep. Our sleep, no sleep, cortisol level goes up, more stress, we eat more bad stuff, we gain weight, and our blood pressure goes up, and we are at risk for heart disease. So we should be grateful, find joy, and sleep well. And these are my two pups, a long time ago, because they're not gray yet. My dogs are gray. All right, I think that's the end of my slides. Woo. And I finished on time almost, Maya.
So, thanks, Mary. So I do have a couple of questions for you. One is about, let's go back to the dairy question. With all the different dairy alternatives, I guess.
Yes.
Now there's oat milk, there's almond milk, there's soy milk. Of course, there's regular, milk from cows. So what's the guideline now? Where should we be focusing on for our getting that dairy?
That is not an easily answered question because it is very individual dependent. So for somebody with diabetes, my friend in the back, can't have oat milk because that is so high in carbohydrate and has no protein to it. Somebody with a nut allergy, me, can't have almond milk. And somebody that has a soy positive receptor for breast cancer shouldn't have soy milk. So it is very dependent on the person and what their goals are. If they're trying to get a lot of protein and they don't have any other risk factors, then soy milk, there's a soy cashew combination, might be best for them. If they're focused on calcium, another version might be best for them. The almond might be better for them. So it just kind of depends on their goal. It also depends on their preference too. I know a lot of people hate rice milk. I know other people love it, and same thing with the oat milk. So that
You
would be
added a couple more in there that I didn't even remember, the cashew and the rice milk. So
Mhm. Oh yeah, there's a whole plethora of combinations out there.
right, okay, thank you.
I can't give a straightforward answer.
What about keto diets and heart health?
Keto diets and heart health. Whew. I'm going to tread lightly here because I know a lot of cardiologists recommend the keto diet. And I don't want to contradict them. The science will say that a keto diet that is very high in animal products, such as meats, and high in animal products that are also processed, would increase your bad cholesterol, the LDLs, and with all the salt content around many of those higher meat products, that your blood pressure would increase. Here's the rub. If we are on a keto diet, we don't snack because there's really nothing to snack on, right? If you're on a keto diet, you've been told you can't have carbohydrates, pretty much. So you can't snack on chips, you can't snack on cookies, you can't snack on any of those things or overeat pasta or overeat rice. Most of those comfort foods are eliminated from our diet. And we as humans do much better with black and white diets. You tell me what to eat and I'm going to eat that. And you will until you snack, and then you don't. Versus me saying, just eat in moderation. Eat in moderation probably means nothing the same to any one person. So a keto diet for somebody that has heart disease can be beneficial because of the fact you're eating much less and your diet is much more focused on real foods rather than processed foods. But many of those foods that people will choose are higher in unhealthy cholesterols and salts.
Okay, that's great. What about, a lot of people do soda, and I know that there are some soda alternatives out there like Olipop and Poppy. Are those good for you? I don't know if you're even familiar with what those are.
I've never even heard of those. Sorry.
Okay.
I need to go to the grocery store a little more, I guess, before I do your talks.
Super popular for one of them.
Oh, really? Okay. So what I will say about soda alternatives, if you are diabetic, a diet soda or a soda with an artificial sweetener would be a better choice for you than drinking real soda. Better than that would be to drink carbonated water with just some flavoring. So like one of the Ahas or LaCroix or something like that. Or a flat water with your own added fruits, vegetables put in there.
Okay.
The thing with the carbonated waters, I did find out from a friend who's a hygienist, can deteriorate your enamel. Thank you. Because we drink those and think we don't need to brush our teeth because there's no sugar in them, but they actually do impact our enamel. So
I just recently heard that as well. What are some products that have sugar in them that we might not realize has a lot of sugar? And I know you mentioned yogurt, right? But what other ones are there? Are there some that are sort of hiding that we have no idea?
Granola. We think granola can be healthy for us, and often it is very high in added sugars. Those meal replacement bars, some granola bars, some of the power bars, I think is an old school term. A lot of those bars are very high in sugar, and you might as well just eat a Snickers bar because Snickers has peanuts, so they have protein. So those would be the three that people think are healthy for them. You know, they really think I'm eating a smoothie because I'm using yogurt and I'm using some berries and I'm throwing some granola in there, and there's so much sugar in that because they've just used a vanilla yogurt and they've used a berry that has sugar added to it, and then their granola. So that would be, I guess, my keys that people don't think about. And cereals in general are generally becoming so much worse than they ever have been. I think I just saw a Dunkin' Donuts cereal recently. So if it looks like dessert, it is dessert.
And fruit smoothies as well. What do you feel
So-
about smoothies?
I think smoothies are great if you're using low sugar food. So if you're using non-fat plain yogurt, you're using fresh or frozen fruit, so there's no added sugar, and you're not adding anything else that has extra sugar, then I think that's a great product.
Okay.
When you're using a lot of extra sugars in there and squeezing a whole bunch of honey, and then that's probably not great.
Great. Yeah, I know. I always feel like there's some hidden, when you go into the smoothie shop, if you take a look at some of the,
Yeah, a lot of people put sherbet in their smoothies.
yeah.
I'm just drinking a milkshake at that point.
Good. Mary, I want to thank you so much for being here. I'm going to close off with our online audience, and I'm going to turn it over to you to answer any questions for our in-person audience. But thank you again for being here today.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks again for joining us. We hope that you'll continue to watch us for the rest of Heart Month. We do have our Heart Smart Expo tomorrow. If you have signed up for that, we hope to see you in person. That will be tomorrow, February 14th. And you should be receiving some sort of a reminder for that as well. Thank you again. We look forward to seeing you when we're back online for our next presentation.